Hey guys, Tyler here from tylergloverphotography.wordpress.com, and today we're going to look at adding some sunbeams to the image like this. Alright, so we've got our background layer as our image, and we've duplicated that with Command or Control J. Run up and select color range highlights, and 50 and 190 are good for this image. 50 is pretty good. The lower or the higher you get this, the higher, the less selection it's making. It's getting a whiter selection. Whiter, not wider. And 0, of course, is everything. And you're picking up more and more and more. Now you're picking up less and less and less and less and less. So around 190 is good for this. I'll say OK. And now we're going to make a new layer. We're going to select our layer 1 with our highlight selected. Command or Control C to copy that, and Command or Control V to paste it onto our new layer. Press Enter, and now if we turn everything off, you see we have our highlights selected and on our new layer. So we're going to take this image here and go to Filter, Blur, and Radial Blur, and yours will look something like this, because unless you've been messing around with it, of course. But I have been messing around with mine, so for this image what you need to do is set this amount to 100 and then set it to zoom and leave it on good. That's fine. And you want to get this crosshair centered up on your sun. So we'll try that right there. Alright, so let's turn our background layer on and off. Alright, so what I like to do now, we're going to drag on this ruler over here, click inside the ruler and drag a guide over, and then drag one down to center up on your sun. And if you're a little bit off, just hit the V key and click, and you can move the ruler around. So I want to get it good and centered up on my sun, and then take my layer that I just made, layer 2 with my blur on it, and then I'm going to move that. As you can see, I'm centered up on my sun, and just make sure that I'm good and centered up, and it looks pretty good. If you needed to adjust it, you could just hit Control Z. Actually, go to your History tab, go to your Radial Blur filter, and then Filter, Blur, Radial Blur, and then you can just adjust this as you need, and then hit OK. We've got that done. Now, to add a little bit of depth to the sunbeams, I use Nik software, but an alternate option if you don't have Nik is to just duplicate the layer, Command or Control J, and that will give you 2 sunbursts. Now you can hit Shift and select them, and Control G to group them and call them sunbeams, and then change the blend mode to lighten, and you'll get the sky poking back through up here. You can see the difference there. Whoops. With lighten mode turned on. Alternatively, we could delete this that we just made, and then get this out of that folder. Delete that, and then what Nik has a filter called Analog Effects Pro 2, and they have a preset in here for Classic Camera 5 that adds some good color and depth to it. So I'll show you what that looks like too. Classic Camera 5. So you can see we picked up a lot of the cyan and cyan and the yellows there, and we'll hit OK. Alright, and then we'll change that blend mode to lighten, and there you go, without Nik and with Nik, which I kind of dig it. So let's group those together. Sunbeams. Alright, now we want to take Control Alt Shift E Command Alt Shift E, Command Option Shift E. It didn't work. Why is it not working? There it goes. Creates a stamp. We're going to run up here to Filter. What we're trying to do is sharpen some of these leaves up here. To get some definition back in them to kind of help them pop. And I'm just showing you the unsharp mask because that is one option. There's about 1,000 options. I'm going to use Nik Collections Sharpener Pro 3, and I've created a preset in here that just gives a basic sharpening to the image, and you can kind of see right in here when you slide the slider over it and back, it just picks up a little bit of definition there. So we'll say okay to that. Okay, so here's our Sharpening Pro 3 layer. You can see it added quite a bit of detail back into the leaves. I don't want the detail everywhere. I really only want it right in here. And I'm just looking around the image to see if there's anywhere else that I want to pick up that sharpening. And I kind of like what it's doing down in here with the starbursts, and maybe just a little bit with the starburst or the sunbeams up in here. So what we're going to do is make a layer mask. Click the little cookie cutter looking emblem down here and hit B for brush, and make sure you've got your black selected over here. And we're going to blow this up. Actually, we'll hit click the layer mask and hit Command or Control I to invert it so that it covers up everything we just did, and then hit X to change your brush color to white. And we'll put on like 50%, and my left and right bracket keys above my enter button are changing my brush size. So we'll just paint over some of this right here, pick up some of that, and then we'll come around here like this. There you go. So you can see if you hold Alt and click the mask, you can see what you just created. So that's just poking, cleaning off that blacked out sharpening layers to show that area. So before and after. Looks good. Alright, now we're going to take our, let's go ahead and create another stamp, just so that we have everything on the upper layer here, and create a hue saturation adjustment layer, and go up here and grab this cayenne with our selective adjustment tool here, and decrease that saturation a little bit and increase the lightness. Alright, and then we're going to go to our yellows, and we're going to adjust our hue to a little bit more of a red color. What I'm looking at with the yellows is this greeny looking yellow that the Analog Effects Pro filter created right there. So I'm just going to change that, oops, not the saturation, the hue. Change it to a more redder hue, and then yeah, that looks good. Alright, so we're going to take our mask, hit Control I to invert it, get our brush tool again with our white color selected on about 50%, and then come in here and paint in these yellowish looking green areas in our leaves to kind of regain some of that warm glow and not use such a muddy looking green color. So you can kind of see the before and after on the leaves, and then we'll do the same thing to our cayennes where they're looking a little hot. Alright, so you can see the before and after. and just look for any other areas that you might want to fill in. I think it looks pretty good. So now that we have that fixed up, you see this detail in this branch here and these branches here. I want to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is make a new layer and hit Shift F5 to fill it, and I'm 50% gray, and then change it to overlay. And we're just going to do a little quick dodge and burn on these tree branches. So over here is your dodge and burn tool, and I want to burn it. So I'm going to increase my brush size a little bit, and my exposure set to 24, just because I want to I don't want to have to do this a lot. So this will go pretty quickly at 24% exposure. So I'm just darkening in that tree branch there, and adjusting my brush size accordingly, and darkening in, darkening. Because really there's no way I was going to see a whole ton of detail in that tree branch staring directly into the sun. And sometimes HDR really brings out shadows and makes them visible when they shouldn't be. So you want to kind of control that the best you can, because nothing's worse than an HDR image that looks hyper unrealistic because you just forgot to color in a shadow or something. Because a lot of times HDR has an issue with over brightening of shadows and kind of muddying out some highlights. So make sure you always go back and dodge and burn and correct any shadow issues you see. So we're going back to this mask layer for the color, and I'm just going to whoops, let's see, what have I done? Go here, select white with my brush, B for brush, that would help. There it goes. And I'm going to color over these branches here where the cayenne is bleeding on to the branch. You can see where I got rid of that cayenne, and just now it just looks like a regular old sunburst. Alright. Looks pretty good there. I'm just looking around the image to make sure everything looks good. We got our dodge and burn. Yeah, looks nice. Alright, so now I'm just going to crop it in a little bit. So let's just go ahead and flatten everything down. And we will go to our crop tool here and bring this up slightly. Something about like that. A little bit too much maybe. Alright, so there is our final image. So thanks everybody for checking out my first video tutorial. If you got any questions, hit me up on the website or at UT Glover on Twitter, and I will see you next time.